Welcome to the Natural Year Challenge video series. This is month 5, today making a dairy ferment. And you certainly can use coconut milk for either one of these that we're going to do, which is yogurt and kefir. I know most people call it kefir. At our house we call it kefir. Kefir is not the correct way. It's technically kefir. No matter which you call it, that's what we're going to discuss. Now, if you do want to use dairy, and those who are lactose intolerant many times can tolerate homemade yogurt and kefirs because so much of the lactose is eaten away, pre-digested, and it's not an issue. So at this point, let me explain. If you have access to raw milk, it's better for you, and I know there's a lot of confusion about that. The reason is it's not chemically altered, and if you see, you can see a line right here. This is raw cow milk, and you can see the cream rising. So again, the cream is at the top, and the rest is down there, and that just shows how naturally that will happen. With homogenized pasteurized milk, of course, it's all one. Essentially, it's heated, and it's heated to a point that it kills a lot of the enzymes, including the one that digests lactose, and that's why there's so much lactose intolerance, is because it's missing the enzymes. So if we have all of those good enzymes, all the better for us. When we ferment, we're reinstating, we're giving it back, we're putting life back into the milk. That's why pasteurized milk is okay to use for these, and it gives back those enzymes. Now, if you can find grass-fed cows, there's a new milk on the market as of March called grass milk. Anything that's organic, the better quality you can get, the more life there's going to be that's brought back into it. Try not, well, actually you probably cannot use the ultra pasteurized. It's heated so high it kills so much of the enzymes and life in there that's hard to bring it back. I just want to show you this page from the book Deep Nutrition that shows the difference between non-homogenized milk and homogenized milk. Most pasteurized milk is homogenized. That's where it's all one, so you don't have that separation. But you can see that the chemistry is very different. It's actually just a different food. When you push through these molecules and you squeeze it out, you're creating a whole different food that can be irritating to the body. Now, if all you have is pasteurized milk, honestly, when you're fermenting, it brings it back to life, so that's okay. So the first thing we're going to do is make yogurt. Now, I have raw milk. I've been letting it sit out to kind of warm it up. You don't have to because you're going to be heating it. And since there's so much good cream here, I'm gonna get the top. I'm gonna make some cream kefir with the top. You can certainly shake it and use it all. It doesn't matter, but we really like that cream. So I'm going to take the milk and I'm gonna heat it. If it's pasteurized, you're gonna heat it to 180 degrees and then bring it back down to about 100. Since this is raw milk, all I'm gonna do is heat it to about 100. Okay, so I have got about 8 cups of milk, raw milk in this case, here that I'm going to heat up. And this is a yogurt thermometer, which works great. So somewhere in the green, about 105 degrees really. You cook it at 100, 105, some say 90. You'll find what works for you. Since this is 8 cups, I've got a yogurt starter that I got, and this is what I use. You don't have to use this. You can use a previous batch of homemade yogurt. Some people use a probiotic powder, something to inoculate the milk to get it to reproduce the good guys, I call them. Okay, now this is really to me, this is the only part that needs a lot of direction, and that is to make sure you've got it the right temperature. So again, if it was pasteurized milk, you want to heat it to 180 and bring it back down to about 100 or 105. It's now in the range, so now I'm going to add my starter. And as I said, you can use a previous batch of yogurt. You use a bit of that. I think it's 1/4 cup. I don't do this because I have this starter and I've had it. It lasts for a couple years and I never use it all, so I'm just confident every time I use that. No reason you can't use another batch. Okay, so I'm going to use 1/8 teaspoon because I have about 8 cups of milk, and I put it in there. I've moved it off the burner so it doesn't continue to get hot. You can use a probiotic or yogurt. Now, this is what I do. I take my stick blender, and that's how I mix it in. You can use a spoon. You don't need to do this. So I blend it up so that I know it's thoroughly blended. then I pour this out and pour it into I use mason jars for mine. And then you have your option on how to cook. Now some people use a stainless steel thermos that you filled with boiling water, you dump it out and you put the yogurt in there, and it can set in there because it generally stays between 90 and 100 degrees. So that's an option. I use my dehydrator. If you don't have a dehydrator or a yogurt maker or a thermos, you can put the oven on the lowest temperature, open it slightly, put a fan, and there's a way to make your own dehydrator at any rate to keep it at about that temperature. If your house is warm, you can insulate it with towels. Anything to keep it at a solid temperature for 24 hours. And this is important, 24 hours in order to ferment it thoroughly. And that would be the problem with store-bought yogurt, is you're not sure how long they fermented it. It's not that it's bad, it's just that this way you get the best of the fermented qualities. You get those good probiotics that have had a chance to multiply. So it's good for you. Okay, so I've put them in the jars. I've put on lids. You don't necessarily have to do that because this is all a uniform temperature. And then I put my dehydrator on approximately 95 to 100. I like 100. And you let it go for 24 hours. And 24 hours later it should set, and you have something like this. That's the yogurt, and now we'll do the kefir. This is a little easier, and note that there's a lot more beneficial probiotic bacteria and yeast in kefir, but it can be a little strong for some people. Yogurt's a very gentle way to start down that probiotic path. But if you're ready for kefir, you have a couple of options. You need a starter. Same as with the yogurt, something to inoculate the milk or the coconut milk, whatever you're using. One option is to use something that you buy, a kefir starter. The other is to use grains, and that's what we're going to use today. You can also use an existing kefir that you've made for cream. So for cream, remember I got this off the top of the raw milk, so I'm going to use a little bit of milk kefir that I made. And I have not stirred this up, so you can see it's been fermenting more in the refrigerator, but it really doesn't matter. I'm going to take some of this, and I do this by sight. It's a small amount of cream, and I'm just going to stir it in, and that's going to inoculate it to make cream. I'm going to wipe that off and put a cap on it and put it in the cupboard for 24 hours. And this is what it looks like in 24 hours. There's nothing else you have to do. You don't need to strain it or anything. It's just you can stir it in 24 hours if you'd like, but that's what it turns out to be, and there's all sorts of great things you can do with that. Now to make it with the grains and milk, I've got 2 cups milk and I've got my grains. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of the kefir grains. 1, 2. You can get these online. You can buy them dehydrated and then make them come alive again. That's a process. But I'm going to put, and you can heat up the milk to that 90 degrees. I just use it room temperature. Even if it's a little cold, I just add an hour to it. I'm going to put a top on it and leave it for 24 hours. Okay, it's been 24 hours, approximately 24 hours. I had to do it a little sooner because the kitchen's quiet and that's not always the case. But it's best to wait 24 hours if you can. It just really ferments well. So you take your kefir and you pour it into a strainer. Now some will say it shouldn't be metal because it will react. I think it goes through so quickly. Metal is fine, but I use this. Sometimes I use metal. And then you just pour it in and strain it. And you'll get the grains, obviously. And you'll kind of do this to continue to strain it. And a lot of times the grains will multiply. So you want to keep it at a steady temperature of a room, good 75 degrees around, but it's steady. It will ferment better in the summer than it does in the winter. Sometimes in the winter I use a dehydrator. Basically I'm going to strain it. Once I've strained it, I have a decision to make. I can let this ferment for another 24 hours for a total of 48. It'll ripen more. It'll make it a little more sour, or I can just put it in the refrigerator and start to drink it. I love this now. It took a while to develop the taste, so you can add some vanilla or stevia or whatever. fruit, use it in smoothies, lots of things to do with that. The grains then can be stored in regular milk or yogurt to rest in the refrigerator, and you need to change that out every 7 days, or you can just start a whole new batch. And these will gradually multiply over time. Hopefully, if the temperature is steady enough. There are tricks to making them multiply, but generally they'll multiply on their own, and then you start all over again. And that's this edition of the Natural Year Challenge, Making a Dairy Ferment Month 5. Thanks for watching.